Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Alicia. Welcome to the family. Today I'm going to be giving you 7 translated book recommendations. I will be letting you know who the author is, who the translator is. I did try to include something that might appeal to everyone. I do have a couple of genres included in here. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. I wanted to start off with nonfiction memoir category. The first translated work that I'm going to recommend to you, this is also one of my favorite memoirs and one of my favorite books of all time, is going to be Night by Elie Wiesel. And I do believe that this was originally published in French. It was translated by Marion Wiesel into English. So this is an account of Elie and his family when they were taken from their home back in 1944 and they were sent to a concentration camp called Auschwitz, and then later on to a different concentration camp called Buchenwald. It's definitely a very short, bitter, and vivid book. It's extremely heartbreaking, and honestly, every single time that I read it, I get tongue-tied and emotionally tied up just because it's so vivid. Again, it's a very short book. Mine, as you can see, is very tattered. It's a little old, but it's just a little bit over 100 pages. Highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. It's actually part of a trilogy, which I didn't know about until very recently. I haven't read the other 2 books, but I do plan on rereading this soon. The next translated work that I have for you is also a memoir. And this one really stands out to me because it does take on a different sort of format. It is in a graphic novel format, and this is called Persepolis. I've only read volume 1 of Persepolis. I read it back in high school, so it's been quite a while. For this specifically, I'll be talking about volume 1 called Persepolis, The Story of a Childhood. Persepolis is written by Marjane Satrapi and it's translated by Matthias Ripa, and I do believe this was originally published in French as well. So in this first book, we follow Satrapi from the ages of about 6 to 14 in Tehran during the Islamic Revolution, and this is essentially a portrait of daily life in Iran. I mean, this very tumultuous time in their history as a country. It's one that's also very heartbreaking, very, very powerful. Another read that I think is very impactful, and one that I equally advise you to pick up. The format to me is really interesting because it is written in graphic novel form. Everything is in black and white. And for some reason, that simplicity, along with the perspective being told of someone who is younger and through their eyes, adds this extra layer of depth and richness, but also this extra level of sincerity, which I really enjoyed. So definitely recommend you to pick it up. The next book on this list I'm briefly going to mention because I do have a dedicated review for this book, but this is Tender as the Flesh by Agustina Basterrica. This was originally published in Spanish by an Argentinian author. This was translated by Sarah Moses. This is a horror fiction book. So this is set in a dystopian world where humans are no longer able to consume animal meat because of this virus or disease that goes around infecting all animal meat, which makes it toxic for us, and therefore we can't eat it. In order to deal with this crisis of no longer having meat available, there's a government-sanctioned program to breed humans. You heard that right, breed humans for the consumption of flesh. So it's definitely a book that touches on the darker side of humanity and what it means for us to eat meat and to consume meat, and also on the meat production industry. If this is something that sounds interesting to you, I think this is a good one to pick up. The next book on this list is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. This was originally translated by Deborah Smith from Korean. The Vegetarian is literary fiction / horror, and then to this day, I don't know if I'm disturbed by this book or if I love it. It walks a very fine line between those 2 moods every single day. But basically in The Vegetarian, we follow one woman called Young Ye who has violent dreams about meat consumption. Because of this, she stops meat altogether, and from there we go with her on this journey to become more plant-like. It's definitely an allegorical tale of power, of violence, trying to free yourself from violence and from power, and it's quite disturbing at times. Definitely look up trigger warnings before going into this. This is definitely a masterful piece of work, but I know it's not going to be for everybody. It's very violent, it's very weird, It's trippy, but one that you should check out if you love weird books that leave you going, huh? The next book on this list is The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This was originally published in Japanese and it's translated by Stephen Snyder. This is a literary fiction book with elements of magical realism. If you're someone that likes stories and tales, I think this is one that you might quite enjoy because we do have a story within a story, as our main character is a writer. This is set in a dystopian world where our main character lives on an island, and on this island things disappear, and this is normal. When an object disappears, it doesn't just disappear in its physical form, it also disappears from the mind slowly. And due to these compulsive tendencies that these residents have, they burn and get rid of all of these objects that disappear within that given day. However, there are people on this island who don't forget, and because of this we have a force called the Memory Police that are in charge with making sure that all objects that are disappeared are gone, but also are tasked to find the people who don't forget and take them away. And so we do follow our main character, who is a writer. She is one of the people that does forget when objects disappear, but when she realizes that her editor is one of the people who doesn't forget, she begins to hide him in her house, and the story goes on from there. Again, very atmospheric read. It's one that is very slow moving and slow paced. It's character driven. If you like fast driven plots, this is not for you. If you like stories that come together and really tie up nicely, this is not for you. There's a lot of loose ends in here. It's very slow moving, but it's one that made me think a lot to this day, and it's one that I already want to reread very soon. The next book on this list is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, and this was originally translated by Tapley Takimori. This is a literary / contemporary fiction novel about a woman who has worked at a convenience store part-time for 18 years and is extremely content to just work there. She is an eccentric woman who wants to fit into the world, and she found this little haven in working at a convenience store. She mimics people's behavior working at the convenience store in order for her to fit in, and she models her life in a way that will make her successful to continue working at this convenience store. But after working 18 years at this convenience store, people start to ask questions like, why aren't you married? Why don't you have kids? Why are you only working part-time? And she realizes then that maybe things have to take a change for a turn. This was a very fast read. I listened to it in audiobook format. It was approximately 4 hours long. I highly enjoyed it. It was very refreshing. I don't think I've read a book like this in a very long time. The character was quirky and eccentric, but also inquisitive and smart, and she made me think of things from a different angle. This is definitely an allegorical tale of society and what we value and what we consider normal and the standards for that. Fast read, quirky read, I really enjoyed it. The last book on this list is called Little Lies by Samantha Schweblin. This was originally translated from Spanish, but the translator for this is Megan McDowell. Little Eyes is a sci-fi horror / dystopian read, and this was really interesting. This one is a very interesting book. It sort of feels like it's a bunch of short stories that all come together to form one cohesive theme, which is the book. And basically in this book we have these little robots called Kentuckys, and people purchase these Kentuckys for a very high price, I may add, and basically you keep it in your house and it follows you around, and it's kind of like having a robotic pet in your house. That sounds really cool, right? But you can't manually shut it off. There is another person that is in charge of the Kentucky. So on the other end of this, you can sign up to be someone that lives in a Kentucky. That way, for example, if you live in Argentina, you're able to be in the house of someone that's in Russia. So this is definitely a book that explores relationships and connectivity and the price of being so interconnected. So in Little Eyes, we do follow several different perspectives. We follow people that control the Kentuckys, and we also follow people who own the Kentuckys. We get to see from all different sides, which was very, very interesting. Definitely a weird book, one that is a very good thought experiment in my opinion, but the plot doesn't really go anywhere. There's not a lot of character development. This is one that you will want to pick up if you like thematic books or if you like thought experiments, because there isn't much plot or much character development in the book at all. So those were the 7 translated books that I have for you today. Let me know if you've read any of them down below, or if you plan on picking any of them up. I do read quite a bit of translated work, so I will be making more of these videos. And sometime next week I will also put out a video about more translated works that I want to read. So if you made it this far, leave a comment with the flag of the country that you live in. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!